John was a single dad with tired eyes and calloused hands. He lived in a small apartment that smelled like old books, and hoped the walls were thin, the windows creaked in the wind, and the fridge made strange noises at night, but none of that mattered to him, because he had something stronger than money or comfort. He had his little girl Lily. Lily was 8 years old with bright eyes and a giggle that could melt the coldest heart. She had lost her mother when she was just a baby, and she only knew her father's arms as stories, and his loved John worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. He fixed cars during the day and cleaned offices at night just to make sure Lily had warm meals and clean clothes. He never complained, not once. He smiled when he left for work before sunrise, and he smiled again when he came home just in time to kiss Lily goodnight. Even when his feet hurt, even when his back ached, he kept going, because she was his world. One rainy evening while John was walking home, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his landlord again. Rent was late again, and the warning was clear: one more delay, and they would be out. John stared at the message for a moment, then put the phone away. He looked up at the dark sky and whispered, "I just need one break, just one." That night he tucked Lily into bed. She asked him if the rain would stop by morning. He told her maybe it would, maybe the sun would come out tomorrow. She nodded and held her old teddy bear close and said, "I think you're the strongest dad in the world." That made John smile wider than he had in days. He watched her fall asleep, then sat by the window listening to the rain and thinking about everything he was trying so hard to hold together. John had dreams. Once he used to draw buildings and design houses. He wanted to be an architect. But life had other plans. After Lily's mother passed, he dropped out of school and never looked back. He traded his dreams for diapers and midnight feedings. He gave up everything without a second thought and never once asked why. The next morning was cold and gray. John walked Lily to school, holding her small hand in his rough one. She skipped on the sidewalk, humming a song. He didn't know he watched her, and thought how lucky he was. Even with all the struggles, he still had the one thing that made it all worth it. After dropping her off, John headed to his first job at the auto shop. He wiped oil from his hands, tightened bolts, checked engines, and smiled at every customer, even when they were rude, even when they didn't tip, because he knew he had to keep this job no matter what. By lunchtime, his phone buzzed again. This time it was different. It was a message from a number he didn't recognize. The message said, "Meet me at 7 p.m. sharp outside your building. I have an offer for you. No name, no details, nothing else." John read it twice, then showed it to Marcus, his best friend who worked at the same shop. Marcus raised his eyebrows and said, "That sounds like trouble, man. Maybe delete it." But John kept thinking about it all day. By the end of his second shift, John was exhausted. His arms felt like bricks, and his eyes burned with sleep. But that message stayed in his mind like a whisper he could not ignore. He walked home in the cold wind, his jacket thin, and his thoughts heavy. When he reached his building, a sleek black car was parked outside, the kind of car that did not belong in this neighborhood. Its windows were tinted, its engine purred like a big, quiet cat. As John stepped closer, the back door opened, and a woman stepped out. She wore a long red coat and sunglasses. Even though it was dark, her heels clicked on the sidewalk like a slow ticking clock. She looked at John and said his name, not asked, said. John nodded, confused. She smiled, but not like someone who was happy, more like someone who knew a secret. She looked him up and down, then said, "I've been watching you for a while, John. The first know everything about you. I know about your jobs, your late rent, your daughter Lily, and I know exactly what kind of man you are." John took a step back, suddenly feeling like he couldn't breathe. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady, but his heart pounding. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she handed him a small card with her name printed in gold. Evelyn Stone. He had heard that name before somewhere, maybe in the news, maybe in passing. She was rich, that much he knew. "I have a business offer for you," she said calmly, "one that could change your life and your daughter's future forever." John stared at her, not knowing what to say. His hands clenched around the card, his mind spinning. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but something in her eyes made him freeze. She smiled again, then said, "Meet me tomorrow at this address. No pressure, but don't be late." Then she got back into the car, and it drove away like a shadow, disappearing into the night. John stood there alone under the streetlight, holding a golden card and 100 questions that refused to stay quiet. John could not sleep that night. He lay on his old couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the wind tapping the window. He held the golden card in his hand, turning it over, and over the name Evelyn Stone shimmered in the dim light. It looked expensive, too expensive for someone like him. He wanted to ignore it. He wanted to throw it away and forget the whole thing. But the way she looked at him, the way she spoke his name like she had known him forever, that stayed in his mind like a song he could not stop hearing. In the morning, Lily noticed he was quiet. She asked if he was feeling okay. He smiled and said he was just tired. But his mind was racing even while he packed her lunch. Even while he tied her shoes, he kept thinking about that black car and that woman with eyes like ice and fire. After walking Lily to school, he called Marcus and told him everything. Marcus laughed at first, then got quiet. Real quiet. That's weird, man, real weird. He said rich people don't just show up out of nowhere unless they want something. John knew that too, but curiosity had already planted itself deep inside him, and it was growing fast. He looked at the address on the card. It was across the city, in a part he had never been to, a part where the buildings were tall and clean and shiny, where people wore suits, not grease-stained overalls. That evening he stood outside the address dressed in his cleanest shirt and the one jacket he owned with no holes. His hands were sweating, but he didn't wipe them. He didn't want to look nervous. He didn't even know why he cared. The building was made of glass. It reflected the sky and the traffic like a mirror. A man in a black suit opened the door without asking anything and led him through a quiet lobby into an elevator that moved faster than any elevator he had ever been in. When the doors opened, Evelyn was waiting, standing by a wide window with a view of the whole city. Her red coat was gone now, replaced by a simple black dress. She looked powerful, like someone who controlled everything in the room without saying a word. "You came," she said, not surprised, not smiling, just stating the fact. John nodded, still unsure what this was about. He wanted to ask, but the words got stuck in his throat. She motioned for him to sit and poured 2 glasses of water, then sat across from him, her eyes locked on his, like she was reading him, like a book she had already read twice. "I know you're wondering why I called you here," she said, her voice smooth and calm like water over stone, "and I'm going to tell you, but first I want to ask you a question." John leaned forward, a little curious and cautious. "What would you do if someone offered you $1 million? She asked, just like that. No build-up, no warning, just dropped the words like bricks in the air. He blinked, then laughed nervously. "Is this a trick question?" he asked. "No," she said, her face unreadable. "It's very real. $1 million in cash for just one night of your time. No questions, no cameras, no rules. You come with me for one night, and the money is yours." John stared at her, trying to figure out if she was serious. Her tone, her face, her eyes, all said yes, this was real. But his mind was spinning. Why him? What did she want? What kind of night was she talking about? He thought of Lily. He thought of their broken fridge and the rent notice and the shoes she had outgrown 2 months ago. He thought of how many nights he had cried in silence when she was asleep, just praying for a way out. But then he thought of something else. He thought of his father, a man who once told him that no amount of money could buy back your name once you sold it, and he wondered what kind of man he would become if he said yes, without knowing what he was really saying yes to. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice soft but firm. "I know what you're thinking," she said, "and you're right to ask yourself those questions. I would too, but I chose you for a reason, because I've seen how you live, I've watched you, and I believe you're different." John looked at her, now more confused than ever. "You've been watching me?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "and I've made this offer before to others, men with money, men with fame. They all said yes without thinking, but you're not like them. I see that, and I need to know if I'm right." He didn't respond right away. The room felt heavy, like the walls were listening. He looked down at his hands, then at the glass of water, then back at her. "And what happens if I say no?" he asked. "Then you walk out that door, and I never contact you again," she said calmly. "You go back to your life, and I go back to mine. No harm, no foul." "And if I say yes?" he asked. "Then everything changes," she said. "Everything." John sat there frozen, between fear and hope, between doubt and temptation. The clock on the wall ticked louder and louder, like a countdown. Evelyn stood and walked to the window, her back to him. She said, "Only one more thing. You have 24 hours, then the offer disappears forever." John walked home in silence. That night, the cold wind brushing against his face, the city lights flashing around him. But his mind saw none of it. His thoughts were loud, louder than traffic, louder than voices, all circling one thing: one night, $1 million. When he got home, Lily was already in bed, hugging her teddy bear. She looked up and smiled, sleepy and sweet. "You're late, Daddy," she whispered. He kissed her forehead and said, "I had a long day, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." She nodded and closed her eyes, her small hand holding his until her breathing slowed. He sat on the edge of her bed for a while, watching her sleep, her chest rising and falling, her lips twitching like she was dreaming of something funny. He thought about what Evelyn had said about everything changing, about being watched, about men with fame and money saying yes without thinking. He wasn't like them. He never had anything handed to him. He had worked for every dollar, every piece of bread, every smile from Lily. He had given up dreams and nights of sleep and the idea of falling in love again just to protect the one thing that mattered most. But still a number wouldn't leave his head. $1 million, it echoed again, and again louder with each passing hour. It was a number that could fix everything. It could buy a home in a safe neighborhood. It could pay for Lily's school, new clothes, even give her a future he never had. He picked up his phone and called Marcus, who answered with a yawn. "You serious, man?" Marcus said after John told him the full story. "She just offered you $1 million like that." "Yes," John said. "She looked right at me and said it with no fear, no hesitation." "That's crazy, bro," Marcus replied. "But maybe this is your chance. I mean, think about Lily. Think about all the nights you come home broken and tired. You deserve this." John didn't answer right away. He knew Marcus meant well. But it wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, something he couldn't name. That night John didn't sleep. He sat by the window watching the city, breathing slow and deep, the card still in his hand, the gold letters shining in the moonlight. He asked himself over and over, would he be the same man after this, or would something inside him break forever? In the morning Lily was cheerful. As always, she wore mismatched socks and sang while brushing her teeth. She asked him if they could get pizza after school. He smiled and said maybe if things go well today. After dropping her off, John walked slowly to the auto shop. His steps, heavy as heart, even heavier. The noise of tools and engines helped clear his mind for a while. But every time his phone buzzed, his stomach flipped. He kept thinking, what would Lily think of him? If she knew what the offer was, what kind of man would she see? Would she still call him her hero? During lunch break, he sat behind the shop near the dumpsters where no one would hear him. He took out the card and stared at it again. This was not a joke. This was not a dream. It was real. And he had to decide. He thought about Evelyn, her sharp eyes, her calm voice, the way she said everything changes. He didn't know if she was kind or dangerous or both, but he knew she wasn't ordinary. She had plans and secrets, and he was now part of one. Later that evening, he went to pick up Lily from school. She ran into his arms laughing and asking if they could get extra cheese on the pizza. He hugged her tighter than usual. She smelled like crayons and sunshine and hope. At the pizza shop, she talked nonstop about her day, about her drawing, about a girl in her class who ate glue and made everyone laugh. John listened and nodded, but his mind was somewhere else, counting hours, measuring risk, trying to see the future through fog. When they got home, Lily drew pictures. While he cleaned the kitchen, she showed him a drawing of the two of them standing under a big sun with a house and a dog and a garden with red flowers. She pointed to it and said, "This is our future, Daddy." John felt a lump in his throat. He told her it was the best picture he ever saw. She smiled, proud and innocent, then ran off to color more. Later, when she fell asleep, he stood at the window. Again, the city looked the same as always, but tonight it felt different, like it was waiting for his answer, like the wind already knew what he would choose. The phone buzzed again. It was a text from Evelyn, same number, same calm tone. 12 hours left, John. Your answer will shape more than just your future. He didn't reply, not yet. He stood there holding the phone, his reflection in the glass looking back at him like a stranger. He whispered to himself, "I have to do what's right, not just what's easy." The night stretched long and quiet, the golden card still on the table, the city breathing outside his window, and inside his chest a storm was growing, one that no one else could see. John stood at the mirror, buttoning his shirt with shaky hands. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. Every second felt heavy like a stone in his chest. He looked at his reflection and didn't recognize the man staring back, a man torn between fear and hope, between doubt and desperation. He walked to Lily's room and kissed her forehead. She was already asleep, her tiny hand resting on her teddy bear, her breathing slow and peaceful. He whispered, "I love you, sweetheart," then quietly left the room, his heart squeezing tight with every step. The black car was already waiting outside, just like before. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door and nodded. John slid inside. The leather seats were cold and smooth, the windows tinted, so dark he could only see his own nervous face. The ride was silent, the city rushing past like a blur of lights and shadows. John tried to calm his breathing. He told himself it was just one night, one strange rich woman, one chance to change everything. But the truth was he didn't know what this night really meant, and that was the scariest part. They arrived at a tall building with gold trim and a glass entrance. The driver opened the door and motioned for him to go, and John stepped out, his legs feeling like rubber. He walked through the doors and was met by another man in a suit who led him to a private elevator. The doors closed and the silence felt even louder. When the doors opened, Evelyn was waiting, her hair down, this time her dress simple but elegant. She smiled slightly and said, "You came." John nodded, unsure if that was the right choice, but knowing it was the only one he could make now. She led him into a room filled with soft light and quiet music. A dinner table was set for 2 candles, flickering gently in the center. The food looked expensive. Things he couldn't name, things he had never tasted. Evelyn sat and motioned for him to do the same. They ate in silence for a while. She watched him closely, like she was studying every move, every bite, every breath. Then finally she spoke. "Do you know why I chose you?" John shook his head. She smiled. "Not because you're poor, not because you're desperate, but because you said no at first. Most men say yes the second they hear the number." John looked at her confused. "But I didn't really say no, I just needed time." "Exactly," she said. "That's what made me curious. You hesitated, you thought about more than just money. That's rare." She stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the city below. "I've been testing people for a long time, John. Powerful people, rich people, smart people. I give them a simple offer: one night, $1 million. No strings attached. Most of them take it without asking what the night is about." John stood too, his voice low and steady. "So what is it really about, Evelyn? What is this night? What do you want from me?" She turned to him, her eyes softer now. "I wanted to see if there's still someone in this world who values something more than money. I wanted to know if kindness and honesty still exist in men who have nothing left but still choose to stand tall." John didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. The walls around him suddenly felt less threatening and more like a secret he had just stepped into. Evelyn walked closer and placed a small black box on the table. Inside was a stack of cash, crisp and clean. "This is yours," she said. "No matter what happens next, whether you walk away tonight or stay and hear the rest of what I have to offer." John looked at the box, then at her. "I don't want money if I don't know the reason behind it. I'm not for sale, Evelyn." She smiled again, wider this time, like she had been waiting for those exact words. "That's why you're here, John, because you're not for sale. Because I believe you're the kind of man who can do something good with what I'm about to give." She picked up a folder and handed it to him. Inside were papers, documents, photos, and at the top, a name: the Lilly Foundation. "It's a new project I'm starting," she said, "a program to support single parents, those who work day and night, those who give their all without asking for praise. I want someone to lead it, someone who understands what real sacrifice means." John felt his knees weaken. He sat down slowly, his eyes scanning the folder. This was not just a donation. This was a mission, a purpose, something that could change not just his life, but the lives of many. "You want me to run this?" he asked carefully, his voice shaking a little. "Yes," she said, "and I'll guide you, support you, train you, if needed, but the heart of it will be yours, because you know what it means to fight for someone you love." The room went quiet again, but this time it was peaceful, not tense, not cold, just full of something rare and powerful. John looked at the box, the folder, the woman standing across from him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something real. He felt seen. John sat in the quiet room, holding the folder in his hands, his eyes scanning every page, his fingers shaking slightly, not because of fear, but because something inside him was waking up, something he had buried under years of struggle and tired nights. Evelyn stood by the window again, her voice calm, but different now, softer, almost sad. "I didn't choose your name from a list," she said. "I've known about you for a long time, longer than you think." John looked up, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean, you've known me for a long time?" She walked over slowly and sat across from him again. "When I was a little girl," she began, "I lived in a tiny apartment with my father. He was a janitor. He worked double shifts to take care of me. My mother left when I was 5, so it was just the 2 of us. He never complained, not once, not when he was sick, not when he was tired. He just kept going." John listened, his heart starting to race, because something about her story felt strangely close to home. "He would come home late every night," she continued, "but he always made time to sit by my bed and tell me stories, even when his hands were dirty, even when he looked like he might fall over from exhaustion. And one day, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, 'Evelyn, the world will try to buy your soul. Don't ever let it, because your soul is worth more than anything.'" John felt like the air had gone still around them. "I lost him when I was 17, she said, her voice lower. "Now, cancer had happened fast. I had no money, no safety, no one to turn to except the memory of what he taught me. And that memory became my fire. I worked my way up, started my own business, turned every no into a reason to try harder. And I promised myself that one day I would find someone like him, someone who reminded me of who he was." John was silent for a long time, the room echoing with her words like bells in his chest. "You remind me of him," Evelyn said, her eyes glassy, "but strong, not because you're perfect, not because you're rich, but because you chose love when you could have chosen escape, because you kept your values, even when everything around you told you to let go." John looked down at the folder. Again it felt heavier, now not just paper and ink, but something alive, something filled with purpose. "All those nights you struggled, all those sacrifices you made," Evelyn said, "they mattered more than, someone was watching, someone saw." He swallowed hard, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why me, why now?" "Because the world needs men like you to lead the ones who come after," Evelyn said, "and because I owe it to my father to honor him by lifting someone who walks the same road he walked." She stood again, walked over to a small safe on the wall, enter code, and pulled out another envelope. She handed it to him carefully. "Inside you'll find the first deposit, $500,000 in your name, no strings. And if you agree to lead the foundation, you'll receive monthly support and full control of the program, budget, travel, everything. And I'll be your silent partner watching from a distance, unless you ever need me." John opened the envelope slowly, his hands still not used to this kind of weight. The numbers on the paper didn't feel real, not because of the money, but because of what it stood for. It wasn't a reward, it was a message that he mattered. "This will change Lily's life," he said, his throat tight. "And many others," Evelyn replied, "if you say yes." John looked at her, now really looked at her, not as a billionaire, not as someone with power, but as a daughter who had carried her father's lessons through fire and turned pain into purpose. He stood quietly, walked to the window, and stared at the city, the same city he had walked through with tired shoes and an aching back. Now it looked different, now it looked full of possibility. "I don't want easy money," he said slowly. "I want to build something real, something my daughter will be proud of." "Then this is yours," Evelyn said, "the foundation, the future, the chance to turn pain into power." He turned around, nodded, once, then smiled, a real smile, the kind he hadn't felt in years. "I'll do it," he said, "not just for me, but for all the fathers out there who are still holding on in the dark, hoping someone sees them." Evelyn smiled back, and in that quiet moment, between two people from different worlds, something powerful passed between them, something that needed no words, only understanding. The deal was not about one night, not about money. It was about finding light in unexpected places and honoring the ones who gave us their strength without asking for anything in return. John walked out of that tall glass building with the envelope in his pocket and a new weight in his heart, but this weight was not made of fear or worry. It was made of purpose, of hope, of something bigger than himself. The night air was cool and soft, the wind brushing his face like a quiet whisper saying, "This is the beginning, not the end." The streets looked the same, the lights still flickered, the noise still echoed, but something inside John had shifted. He opened the door to his small apartment quietly, not wanting to wake Lily, but the moment he stepped inside, she ran out of her room and jumped into his arms, her teddy bear trailing behind her. "You're home," she said with sleepy eyes and a bright smile. "I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart," he whispered, hugging her close, tighter than ever before. That night he lay in bed next to her, not on the couch, not by the window, but right beside her, holding her small hand and thinking about everything that had just happened, about the offer, the story, the mission, and the reason he had said yes. In the weeks that followed, everything began to change, not with noise or flash, but with quiet, steady steps, like seeds being planted in the right soil. John met with lawyers and planners. He spoke with Evelyn's team, who helped him learn everything he needed to run a foundation. He read books, he took notes, he asked questions, and most of all, he listened to the stories of other single parents who were fighting the same battle he had known so well. He named the first program after Lily, a scholarship for children raised by single fathers. The second program offered housing support, and the third created job training centers for parents who had to choose between feeding their child or chasing their dream. People started to notice, not just the ones who needed help, but the ones who wanted to help too. Donations came in, messages flooded the inbox. Thank you letters arrived from towns John had never heard of before. But through it all, John stayed grounded. He still walked Lily to school every morning, still packed her lunch, still told her stories at bedtime, still wore the same jacket even when cameras started showing up. Evelyn never appeared in public, never gave speeches, but once every month she met with John in a quiet room, with no microphones, no reporters, just two people remembering why they started all of this in the first place. You made the right choice, she told him one evening as they looked over letters from families who now had roofs over their heads, food on their tables, and hope in their hearts. No, he said gently, we made the right choice. One afternoon, Lily came home from school with a big smile and a flyer in her hand. Daddy, she said, look, your face is on this. My teacher says you're a hero. John looked at the flyer and saw a photo of himself at one of the new centers, helping a young father fill out a job application. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt like a man who finally had a way to give back. Years passed, and the foundation grew bigger, stronger, reaching more people, more families, and more lives every day. And still John never forgot where it all began, with a card of choice and a conversation that changed everything. Lily grew up and followed in his footsteps, not because he asked her to, but because she had seen what love and courage could build. She became a teacher, helping children who had no one else believing in them the way her father had believed in her. One morning while walking together in a quiet park, she asked him, do you ever think about that night when everything changed? All the time, he said with a soft smile, but not because of the money or the offer, because of what it taught me. What's that, she asked, swinging her backpack over her shoulder. That sometimes the hardest choice becomes the most beautiful one, he said, and that your true worth is not measured by what you take, but by what you give. They kept walking, the sun warm above them, the world moving slowly around them, and in that moment everything felt right, not perfect, not easy, but right. Back at home, a new letter arrived from a father in a small town, thanking John for saving his family, thanking him for giving him hope. When all he saw was darkness, John read it slowly, folded it gently, and placed it beside dozens of others just like it. And though he never said it out loud, he knew in his heart that the legacy he was building was not his alone. It belonged to Lily, to Evelyn, to every parent who had once been unseen, unheard, forgotten, and was now rising with pride and purpose. The choice he made that night did more than change his life. It inspired millions to believe again.